We're going to be presenting right here, my dear, though. You're not going to see anything. So bring a chair and sit over here.
We can sit over here. Not Mary's public school.
I'll bring a chair.
Can we start? So thank you for joining. So I'm George. I'm looking after the embryology lab. Most of you know it's downstairs. So I'm going to go through, basic embryology, but please feel free to stop if you have any questions or something is not clear. But to start with, what's your understanding of embryology or the embryologist's job? What do you think the embryologists are doing?
Make babies.
Okay, make babies. Next.
Culturing and watching growing.
Watching. So it is correct. Our job is mainly to make babies in the lab, but it's a little bit more than that. The embryology, what we were doing in the lab, we need to be, first of all, scientists, know a little bit about the basic knowledge of biology. Like researchers, sort of, to be able to do small techniques like ICSI or biopsy. And at the same time, and the most important is the babysitting. Yes, we do make babies in the lab, but we have to create a safe environment for the embryos. We have to make sure that the equipment works well. That's equally important as making an embryo in the lab. So I think I've shown that last time that's the journey of the embryo in the lab. 7 days in 45 4 seconds, and then something I think I have mentioned before. And was years ago, using, and I was in a huge white room, and there was a piece of wood on the wall. And everyone was walking in, and everyone was like, "Oh my god!" And I was in the ground. It was some sort of party, that's some people, but then me thinking as a scientist going back in the lab, watching something like this, that's what my heads are. That's what we're doing. We can create how we all parties. We can make it in the lab. But my head that's my that's how I define it. Everything works, but to me that's art. Now, I'm going to take you a little bit back in time as to where and how pretty much everything started. It's some basic facts. Now, there are a lot of theories from BC. Aristotle was one that was trying to get a concept as to how the embryos and pregnancy is happening. So he was thinking that parents transmit something that mixes with something, humanly eggs and the sperm, and then we have somehow a baby. Now here it says parents transmit not structures of the offspring, but information. What he was trying to explain is the DNA, the egg and sperm they provide. And the reason for that is because there's some scientists, including the Italian scientist that you see here, that obviously he believed in big care, that every sperm or egg, there was a little human inside. And for a long time, they thought that that was the way to go, that sperm little like humans inside eggs as well. So these are the two Latin words, homunculi, that's how they used to call them. Obviously, with a lot of research, a lot of scientists all around the world, then things progressed into embryology from BC to up until now. And then obviously we ended up, the name of this lady.
I learned one thing, but I don't know this. Yeah.
That's Louise Brown. That's the first IVF baby that was born. Do you remember the date? That was born 2 months ago. 1978, I believe. So Louise was the first baby that was born in England. She's a big celebrity. She attends every IVF conference you can imagine in the world. And every scientist has a photo with Louise. Now, before going into the sorry?
Do you have a picture?
No, I don't. Actually, it's fine. If you see here in conference, like every single person is running behind her. And no, I haven't done it yet. So let's start a little bit with sperm and eggs. Just some basic facts. You all seen probably the structure of the sperm. That's how it looks under the microscope. We have the sperm that has the head. The head of the sperm, it has the DNA, the information that would provide the DNA. It's called the nucleus. The acrosome has some enzymes that will help the sperm to enter the egg, digest structures of the egg. It has mitochondria that gives some energy to the sperm, and obviously the tail that makes the sperm move. I don't know if you've seen sperm under the microscope. That's how it looks. But that's how the sperm looks under the microscope. It's quite fast, 35 microliters per second. For a tiny cell, that's a lot. That's its speed. It has no sense of direction and can only swim forward. It doesn't know how to go backwards. Which makes sense because they say that, men have no sense of direction. I think I was too bad out, but it's true. Another interesting fact that during World War I, the British intelligence, they used semen to write secret letters because semen is transparent. So you can see, but if you put it under the light and you write with something like sperm, then you can see like what they write. This way? No, this way.
Oh.
It was a good, smart move, but then obviously they had to find another way. Now, a male produces around 100 to 300 million sperm a day. That's a lot. The sperm factory doesn't stop. It keeps making sperm. The whole cycle of the sperm production is around 3 months. Some might wonder how much there is a lot of space for all these little guys down there. But that's how the testis looks. And inside it has something like spaghetti structures where the sperm is tightly packed in there. So how much in a lifetime? A sperm provider, I should say, not a male, can make up to 500 to 700 billion sperm. If you think that, like, it's a huge number, and we're talking about an average healthy individual. They don't respond to diet, so do inform your friends to give veggies to the kids, and of course as they grow up. That's about sperm. Regarding the egg, you also seen a photo that looks like this. The egg is much bigger compared to the sperm. By 5 months old, the female will have around 7 million, I should say, eggs, but these are eggs which are in a sleeping state, as we all learned from the previous lectures. They're not all active eggs, but by the time of birth, that number comes down to 1 or 2 million. So the point is that females, they're born with the number of eggs that they will have. They need years to grow up because, again, they're in a sleepy state, if you like. They do age fast compared with the sperm. And they do hold the baby making machinery. They have a lot of enzymes. They have the mitochondria that they help the sperm for fertilization and embryo development. Eggs are extremely monogamous. That means they like one sperm to enter the egg. At the same time, when they sense that there is a sperm around, they block the structure around the egg, so no more sperm can enter. If it happens, because receive in the lab, often when you have 3pn or normally fertilized eggs, it's because something has happened at the zona of the egg or something inside the egg. Now, to put all this in context, that's pretty much the journey and the job of an embryologist in the lab. We need to set up for treatment, that's highly dependent on other teams. We need to perform the lab QC, meaning we have to check that the incubators and everything is perfect before we use it for the day. We have to prepare, wash, and analyze the sperm. We have the egg retrieval, egg dissection, egg denudation, IVF insemination, that's when sperm meets the egg in the lab the day of the retrieval, assisted hatching, which is a process to help the embryo release some cells for biopsy, fertilization checks, which is something that the patients are waiting the day after the retrieval, embryo thawing, before frozen embryo transfer, embryo vitrification, egg vitrification, embryo transfer, sperm immobilization, which is a process to do ICSI, biopsy, and then sending the cells over for analysis if it's vitrified. So these are the basic duties of an embryologist in the lab, other than the huge amount of paperwork. That's what the embryologists are doing in the lab. Now, you all heard probably from patients regarding, mix-up, safety. What's your process for double checking that my eggs, and my partner's sperm are the correct ones that we're using? Reassure the patients that we have a double witnessing system in the lab, meaning when we move extra sperm or embryos from A to B, there's always a double witness, meaning another individual to double check. We're using Matcher, which is an electronic system. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a small, it looks like a phone, and we scan barcodes where the embryos are in the culture dish. And it doesn't show 100% traceability, and it does prevent errors. Again, the day of the embryo development begins the day of the retrieval when the embryology lab will wash and prepare the sperm in order for the sperm to reach embryology so we can start making the embryos. So washing and preparing the sperm, it simply means that it goes through some washing steps with solutions to remove all the junk that the sperm has that we don't really need. So we can end up with a small fraction of clean sperm that can be used for treatment. We've seen the video now. When it comes down to IVF, you all know that there are two ways to fertilize the eggs in the lab. One is the IVF, and the other way is ICSI. So IVF, we use it when?
There's no mouth again?
When there's no male factor, meaning the sperm is good. Good means what? That we have enough, we judge that we have enough good looking sperm and good moving sperm, with the hope that the sperm will reach itself the egg to fertilize it. And that's how fertilization happens in the lab. The day of the retrieval, when it comes to IVF, we simply put the eggs in a dish, the sperm, that wave that you see the sperm, it somehow senses where the eggs are, and then it all moves in that direction. Do you see all the sperm here? So it's trying to reach the eggs. The egg is here, and these are the cells that they surround the egg. So those little guys, they have to go all the way through. Most of them will stop halfway through, and then one, the lucky one, as we call, will reach the egg and fertilize the egg. So this is the standard IVF insemination. Now, when it comes to ICSI, it means in most cases that we don't have good or enough sperm. So the sperm maybe looks like this under the microscope. You can see 9 globe, there is one sperm with a nice tail. So definitely that sample needs ICSI. In that case, the sperm needs VIP fast tracking, meaning the embryologist needs to put the egg inside the sperm. And the ICSI is a simple technique where, put the video first. So we pick the sperm with this very, very fine needle. We center the egg in a position that this little structure up here sits always at 12 or 6 o'clock. And then that needle will go inside the egg. There is a little bit of a pause there to feel the resistance. Sucking back, it means that the embryologist broke that zone that you see here, and then the sperm is released inside the egg. This is a job that takes less than a minute if everything is straightforward. But in order to do ICSI, we have to remove the cells that they surround the egg. So as we saw before, the eggs comes from the egg retrieval like this. So we cannot do ICSI when we have the eggs looking like this because we cannot see where to inject. So we have to use a chemical to remove all these cells in the lab. It's called stripping or denudation. So we can end up with a naked egg that looks like this. Only mature eggs can be injected, and mature eggs mean they have that little structure here that's called the polar body. And inside here, in theory, we should have the right number of chromosomes. So only mature eggs can be injected. We can also see before ICSI eggs that unfortunately they look like this, meaning that they're not suitable for injection. These eggs here, they have large structures in the middle, show some egg abnormality, or they have more than one polar body, or they have one polar body that is massive. Or in some cases, you see eggs where the outside cells, they somehow grow on the inside, and these are probably genetically abnormal eggs. So if we collect 10 eggs from a patient and then we have 5 mature and the rest they're abnormal or degenerate, it's because the lab has observed something that made the egg not suitable to be injected. And then after the ICSI, for example, on day 0 or after fertilization, the embryos, they go in those tiny dishes with special solutions that we call them culture media. These are very, very special, very expensive solutions. They grow in the lab in incubators. They look like this. So those machines here, they have the right number, the right amount of gas and the perfect environment for the embryo to grow. The majority now of the incubators that we have in the lab is time-lapse. It looks like this. So it's an incubator that at the same time, it has a camera that takes a photo of the embryo or the egg every 10 minutes. And then it creates the video that I showed you at the beginning. Now, the day after the first check, which is the big day for the patient, what we're looking in the lab is for as many as possible of eggs that they look like this. This is a 2PN and 2 polar body egg. At the same time, we might have eggs that they look like this. They don't have 2 circles in the middle, they have 1, or they have 0, or they have 3, or they have more than 3. So we do culture 1PN embryos because even if we don't see another circle here that indicates normal fertilization, if we culture them and then we do biopsy, then we might get a report back that the embryo was actually normal and meaning somehow it wasn't visible to the lab. 3PN embryos, meaning there is more DNA in that normal based on the observation in the lab. It's something that we don't usually culture, but we might do in the future because there's some reports showing that even if we notice that there are 3 little circles in the egg, then that embryo might be healthy. So it's a fake, if you like, third chronoglus, third set of DNA. Again, that's, for example, after ICSI, that's how the egg look in the culture dish. And then we put them in the time-lapse incubator. and then the embryos grow. At this stage, you see, even 10 seconds, we already reached the day after. So you can see that two circles, they start appearing the eggs. That's the morning after, and that's when the embryologist will update for fertilization. And then we let the embryos grow. We don't disturb them at all. If it's a biopsy cycle, then we'll take the embryos out for assisted hatching. But then the embryos, they stay in and they grow for up to 7 days. In that case, you can see that embryo number 1, 4, 7, 8, they made really nice blasts. The others, they stop growing halfway through, and that's absolutely normal. We don't expect every fertilized egg to reach the blastoid stage or to reach any of the stages before. And I'll explain later on why. Now, that's from ideas like how we record the fertilization. For example, the patient did collect 12 eggs. We did IVF insemination with 12 eggs, and only 4 were fertilized. But if you open the chart, then you will see that yes, 4 were fertilized, but the patient only had 6 mature eggs. The immature eggs, they cannot be fertilized. So it's really important when we deliver the news to tell the patient that X number were mature. Because 4 out of 12, it sounds low, but 4 out of 6, which is actually the truth, it sounds better and it makes more sense to the patient. And the same for when we have abnormal fertilization. We record it here. For example, in that case, the patient had 2 3PN embryos and 2 normal 2PN embryos.
How do you open that screen? That basic event. You show me what I've done?
I don't have ideas here, but yeah, it's quite easy to see it, and it gives you a really nice breakdown of because some patients, as we know now, especially with ChatGPT, they know very very well. They might ask you, okay, how many GV, how many M1, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, where am I looking? What am I doing? So patients now want a lot of details, but we can do that. Now the day. Yeah, it is. Oh, yeah. It will show you where. Now the day after the fair check, we let the embryos grow. On day 2, which is 24 hours later, the embryos, they should have between 2 and 4 cells. At that stage, we don't assess them, we don't look at them in the lab, and we just let them grow. The day after, on day 3, we assess the embryos. And assess means we're just looking how many cells they have, and if they have signs of poor embryo quality, and I'll explain that later. This is that's a patient that had 2 day 3 embryos, and what we're looking in the lab is for number of cells, how many cells the embryo has, and here we can see that. Oops. And also, we're looking for the degree of fragmentation, which is, if you like, some cells that they died and the embryo is pushing out of the way. And that adds to the beauty of the embryo. Less beautiful if there's fragmentation, beautiful if there's no fragmentation, like the embryo that we see up here. And that's how they look also in ideas. When you see 8 cells, 8 is the number of cells, C is for cell, and F is again the grading that the lab gave for those embryos. So we grade them as good, fair, and poor, with good being the best and poor the worst in the grading scale. In that case, the embryo was fair, so it was lacking exceptional quality, but it was somewhere in the middle. And also in that case, you can see that these embryos, they come from IVF, so it was not ICSI because you can still see sperm stuck at the egg. Again, this is another embryo. So if we count the cells, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cells. So we can say that's an 8 cells. It doesn't have any fragmentation, so we can give it a score of good. Now, the day after, the embryos, we don't assess them. They call as you have here probably morula. Morula comes from Latin morum, that means mulberry. That's how I can pronounce it, sorry. And that day, we don't assess the embryos. They keep, from day 3 onwards, they keep growing quite fast. They go from 8 cells on day 3 to 16 to 32 cells on day 4. And then the embryo speeds up so it can grow quite fast. Day 5 is the beautiful, what is called blastocyst. At that stage, the embryo did grow from, let's say, 30 cells to 150 to 100 cells in just a few days. And at that stage, the embryo will decide which of these embryos will have embryos that have the inner cell mass here that will make the baby, and the trifectoderm that will make the placenta. And again, that's something I can show you where to open up in ideas. We do grade the embryos. We give them different numbers from A to C. I'll explain later how we grade them. But something important to remember is that most embryos, most fertilized eggs, will reach day 3. But then from day 3 onwards, that's the most important stage where not all of these embryos will keep growing to make blastocysts. Some of them will stop growing halfway through, and that's again absolutely normal. It's quite rare to have 12 fertilized, 12 blastocysts to be frozen on day 5, 6, or 7. And again, blastocyst assessment is morphological based. The other quality indicator that we have is the PGT, where we look inside the DNA and the genetics of the embryo. So the inner cell mass, which is that structure here that will make the baby, is graded A, B, C, or D. The trophectoderm cells that will make the placenta the same. And the expansion, pretty much how big the embryo is, a grade from 1 to 6. The most important grading is here. In that case, we can see that the embryo is a 4AA. It's expanded, the expansion is grade 4. Beautiful height and a lot of trophectoderm cells, as well as a lot of cells in this structure that will make the baby. On the other hand, if you compare that, that's another day 5 embryo. It doesn't look, you can see the difference. It doesn't look as beautiful as the embryo below. That's a poor quality embryo. So it's a 5. And D means that we don't have enough cells at the trophectoderm, and the inner cell mass cells, they're non-existent, or maybe they're only few. So that embryo cannot be used for biopsy or for freezing. And speaking of biopsy, I know Dr. K has covered PGT a lot. The biopsy procedure is something that I'm showing in this video. The lab has to hold the embryo, it's a day 6 embryo, with a very fine glass pipette. And the embryologist will suck 3 to 6 cells from the embryo. As you can see, the embryo, because it's like a balloon filled with water, it starts losing the water from inside and it's collapsing, as we call it. And that circle here, the red one, is the laser. So the laser is hitting the cells so they can detach from each other. So the embryologist can take these cells to send them to the PGT lab. So at this stage, the majority of the cells, they have been detached. And now the embryologist is trying to locate the other instrument that is holding the embryo, do a technique that's called flicking. Flicking is something like this, that detach the cells on the right-hand side from the embryo. might look a little bit hard, but and it's quite gentle to the embryo. What just happened? Yeah. And then we'll go to the genetic cloud and we'll get the PGT result. In some cases, for example, when we see no result, it means that the cells that we sent were not good enough quality, or in the lab couldn't make a report for that embryo.
Is or is it just?
Actually, it's an indication of how good the lab is. The no-call rate. Usually, the no-call rate should be between 2 and 3% in total. Like if you have 100 embryos, 2 to 3% is acceptable. If you have a lab that has 5, 6, or 7, then you need to check the biopsy practitioner if there is something that is affecting the results. After the biopsy, the embryos they need to be frozen. We vitrify embryos. The process is called vitrification. So only good quality embryos can be frozen because freezing is quite stressful for the embryo. It's a dehydration, and hydration process, meaning those solutions that you see on the left-hand side, they will remove all the water from the embryo to create a glass-like structure so the embryo can stay frozen. And that's Miss Cell's kingdom and the electric kingdom. That's where we have over 60,000 straws, meaning embryos, eggs, or sperm. It's a huge number of material that we store here. And in case, I'm sure you probably have questions from patients like, oh, how many years that my eggs or my embryos can stay frozen. That's a baby here from Columbia. I think it's Dr. Foreman's patient. That embryo was, I think, 18 years old and gave birth recently. And this is a baby that was at the news. The embryo was frozen for 31 years. I think that was in Ohio, Utah. I think your place. Yeah, I think it was Utah. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's it. I hope next year. See you all. And let me know if you have any questions. Yes.
So it is a question for everything, but
So I feel like it's a question that you know, so you have to make a designation of IVF or ICSI before, like you can't start IVF and be like, this isn't going well, like I need some help, and then
shift your urgency.
yeah.
What's your best?
No, actually, that's a really good question. We do what's called rescue. So after failed fertilization with IVF, we can do a rescue. Now, what happens in that case? If when we do the first, we see that the eggs look dark, meaning no sperm is binding at the egg, no sperm has entered the sperm that we can see all, then we can take those eggs and then perform ICSI the day after the retrieval, the day after the insemination. Preferably those cycles they need to be PGT because sometimes we might have a sperm that entered the egg, we don't see it, there is late or no activation at that stage, and then we don't want to inject another sperm in, because then that will lead to abnormal fertilization. We do rescue ICSI, not much, but we've done 5, 6 cases so far.
And it's like automatic, or is it something where like the doctor calls the patient and discusses it, or do you just escalate?
No, we do, when we get fertilization result, usually we reach out to the doctor and say, unfortunately, the patient has fertilization. We can proceed based on the protocol, we can proceed to rescue ICSI, or if it doesn't qualify, because as I mentioned before, the egg might have a lot of sperm attached around, but no such fertilization. And that doesn't allow the egg, doesn't qualify for rescue.
And then you're using sperm from the day before too?
We prefer friends.
When you have like embryos, like, and you be tests, like, because you have a patient that's like, oh, I want to be testing mosaic embryo, like, is there really like a high chance of seeing like a normal result after that, and like, would it damage the embryos?
That's a big, no, you don't know. The embryos, they're really, the babies born after 3 or 4 biopsies, meaning they have been biopsied again and again. It doesn't damage the embryo. It's not preferred for the embryo to do a double biopsy, for example. But we do it, like, a lot of thorough biopsy or film biopsy. The pregnancy rate, they're not as good as when the embryo has been biopsied once. But and if the embryo doesn't like the double biopsy, we see it sometimes when the embryo will degenerate or will not make it. In most cases of biopsies, we culture the embryos overnight to give them time to expand, so we have more cells to take for the biopsy.
Explain the assisted hatching a little better.
Yes. So let me go back and show you. So we do assisted hatching. There are 2 processes in the lab when we do assisted hatching. One is, sorry, so I'll find it. So in order to do biopsy, we need the embryo to have some cells outside this structure. So in this case here, I remember the timing before, but I can't find it now. And now the lab is laughing at me. Bob, it's okay. The meeting is over. You can go now. I'll find the site. So you can see the structure of the egg when they're taking out from the time lapse that that we perform a hole at the structure of the embryo around here, with aim that some of the cells, as the embryo is growing, will be pushed out to be taken for biopsy. That's one case when we do assisted hatching. When the patient is having a fresh transfer, we also do assisted hatching with scope that we're helping the embryo to escape from that shell, the zona, in order for the embryo to implant. So these are the 2 stages that we do assisted hatching.
Do you just do it automatically with like stress transfers?
Yes.
Is it with a
Yes.
just in case kind of thing?
Oh, sorry. You see that?
Yeah.
Okay. So the piece has been taken out in order to do that hole. And then you can see later on the embryo, when the cells are too small, the embryo is sensing where that hole is, and then it's pushing the cells out that will be used to be taken for biopsy. Or if it's a fresh transfer, it should assist the embryo to escape its cell and implant.
You get a lot of questions about grading. Does, like, is it like literature to support like how they look based on like PGT results or based on like growth rates, or how is that like grading associated with?
Now, as I mentioned before, the grading is a beauty contest. It's whatever we see, it's a morphological assessment of the embryo.
But does the
Correlation?
Yeah, is there a correlation between like why you think it's a prettier embryo?
No, the thing is that we have some standard criteria that we're using in the lab. So it's not, it's based on strict universal criteria that we're using to grade the embryos. Like these are standard criteria that most clinics are using all around the world. And every letter, for example, corresponds to a specific observation. Is it correlated with a biopsy report? No. At the same time, you might have really poor embryos, and all of a sudden you biopsy them, and then you have a good, healthy report, meaning they still have a chance. And that's why there are reports and papers out there that they show that patients that had the transfer of a D or a embryo, like the lowest scale, like on the first transfer, there's still a 3 to 4% chance for a healthy live birth.
Oh, but there is like a lower chance.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely a lower chance based on the morphology of the embryo.
Okay.
Yeah.
What like makes you decide to increase on like day 5 versus like 6 or 7?
Depends on everything depends on how the embryos grow. So if the embryos they look pretty much like this, they have formed a blastocyst by day 5, then we can treat them on day 5. If the embryo is a little bit behind, it hasn't formed a structure yet, and it's between here and here, then we might give it another day and treat it on day 6. There's nothing bad between day 5 and day 6. There are patients where the embryos is growing a little bit slower, but that's absolutely fine. Especially with IVF, the fertilization takes place at a later time, but it's mainly based on how the embryo looks. And also, if it's a biopsy cycle, the embryo has to look like this in order for the embryo to be biopsied successfully and then frozen. It's really, really difficult to biopsy every early embryo on day 5 or even day 6 sometimes. And maybe for the grading, we can make like a table or something to explain.
Yeah, I got other forms at one point that I know you guys distribute last year. I just feel like also patients asking a lot, and I do a lot of that. Like day 6, day 5, like a freeze up day 2.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I don't have all the information, so I share with the patient the basics, but,
And then like the day 7s, I don't know, do they have lower perspectives?
They have lower chance for pregnancy, but they do have.
But their perspective would, is it lower?
I would not, to be honest. I don't know if Dr. Froman has any study,
Yeah.
but they have lower chance for pregnancy.
I have the day 6.
And they find slightly better, then day 6, still very, very close, and then day 7, much lower, but still good chance for pregnancy. But if you can get like older, like you can do like those versions that you get patients all the time, just email them to me, then we can create something that will help you answer those questions.
What's the best indicator of a good embryo?
Morphology. Like again, everything we do in the lab is according to the indicators of morphology, and then obviously the biopsy. Because as I mentioned before, poor embryo might be a healthy embryo, and vice versa. But for us in the lab, everything is based on morphology and how the embryo looks. And that's something that sometimes patients don't understand, that grading is a morphological assessment. It's based on a specific time, and embryos do change. 3 hours later, 4AA embryo might be 4BB, because they do grow quickly and they do change.
The letters can change with the numbers, right? Like 4 versus 5 or 8 versus 8.
The numbers are always from 1 to 6, and that's how big, how expanded the embryo is. The letters with A, of course, meaning the top. A and B, they're pretty much the same, good bulk, and then C and B lower bulk.
You wouldn't freeze below like C.
B, no. C will freeze, not D.
No.
No.
What's the report patients are always asking for?
They are report, they are the report. This is a summary of day 1, day 7.
Okay. And that's, are we allowed to share that with patients?
Yeah, we used to give it in the past, the lab used to generate it, but
Yeah, I know I asked for it, but I feel like the last one has been used, but I don't know, maybe it's just me.
yeah, just first generate our report and counts.
Oh, I know a little bag thing.
Yeah, and then if you have to exit in your
And then I
progress.
I don't remember that for everything. Yeah. Right.
There's a different one eggs versus embryos.
Yeah, the egg is much shorter because all the report has is how many mature, how many frozen. The embryo is a little bit more detailed. Okay? Great. And please, any questions you have, just make a list and just send them over so we can make a document to help you, answer.
That'll be the data for next year's, summer school.
We got a picture of patients and their friends, and they had IVF babies from us. And so they sent us a picture of their babies, like 6 months old, and they were like, here's a picture of our babies, the first time they've been together since they were in your lab. No, different moms, like different babies,
Ah.
literally different
Yeah.
families. I didn't know they knew each other.
Yeah.
And then you thought, I didn't know that knew. There's a sense of.
It's a lot of babysitting in the lab. But
Yeah, you.
Thank you.